Reed Callahan's pickup truck coughed to a stop in front of his ranch house. 6 days in Billings had felt like 6 months. The transmission job on the mining equipment had taken longer than expected, but the pay would cover Knox's school expenses and then some. He grabbed his duffel bag and tool case from the bed of the truck. The house sat dark against the Montana sky. No porch light, no warm glow from the kitchen windows. Reed checked his watch, 11:47 p.m. Late, but not that late. He climbed the front steps, noting the loose board he'd been meaning to fix. Inside, the air felt cold and still. Reed flipped the switch. Nothing happened. Willa. His voice echoed in the empty hallway. Knox. He tried the kitchen light. Dead. The breaker box sat in the basement. Reed felt his way down the stairs, using his phone's flashlight. 3 breakers had been thrown. He reset them and climbed back up. The house came alive with humming appliances and soft lighting. Reed walked through each room. Empty beds. No notes. No explanation that a sound drifted from outside. Faint but distinct, like someone crying. Reed stepped onto the back porch. The barn stood 50 yards away, its sliding door cracked open. The security light above it had been turned off. He grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and walked toward the barn. Gravel crunched under his boots. The crying sound grew clearer. Knox. Reed pushed the barn door wider. His flashlight beam swept across the interior tools hanging on pegboards. Hay bales stacked against the far wall, his old Chevy engine block covered with a tarp. Dad! The voice came from behind the hay bales. Reed moved closer, his beam catching movement in the shadows. Knox sat curled against the back wall, hay stuck in his dark hair. His left cheek was swollen, purple bruising spreading toward his ear. Jesus. Reed dropped to his knees beside his son. Knox, what happened? The boy's eyes were wide and glassy. He flinched when Reed reached toward him. Dad, are you okay? The question hit Reed like a slap. Of course I am. What happened to you? Knox's voice dropped to a whisper. You were here, but it wasn't really you. What do you mean? You came in my room, but your voice was different, and you smelled wrong. Reed's blood went cold. When? 3 nights. Maybe 4. I lost count. Where's your mom? She went somewhere. She said you'd watch me. Knox touched his swollen cheek. But you were mean. Really mean. Reed's hands shook as he lifted his son. Knox weighed nothing. Come on. Let's get you inside. Are you going to hurt me again? The words cut deep. Reed's throat tightened. I will never hurt you. Never. He carried Knox to the house, his mind racing. 6 days in Billings. He had the receipts, the hotel records, the work orders. He'd been 300 miles away. Reed settled Knox on the couch with ice wrapped in a kitchen towel. The boy held it against his cheek, watching Reed with careful eyes. I need to check something in the barn. Will you be okay for a few minutes? Knox nodded. Reed handed him the television remote and returned to the barn. The storage room sat in the back corner behind a locked door. Reed had built it himself 2 years ago, installing a heavy-duty deadbolt. He kept expensive tools inside, along with hunting equipment and family documents. The lock hung open. Reed's pulse quickened. He always locked that door. Always. He pushed it open and stepped inside. His flashlight beam revealed a rifle case, still locked. The tool chest, undisturbed. But something felt wrong. A cardboard box sat on the workbench, a box that shouldn't be there. Reed opened it. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, lay a rubber mask. His own face stared back at him, every detail perfect. The skin tone, the scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood accident, even the slight stubble pattern. Under the mask, he found a small electronic device, a Bluetooth voice modulator. The package label read, True Voice Pro, Perfect Voice Replication. A coil of rope sat in the bottom of the box, along with an amber prescription bottle. Reed read the label, diphenhydramine, extra strength sleep aid. His hands trembled as he set each item on the workbench. Someone had been here. Someone had pretended to be him. Reed remembered the barn's motion-activated security camera. He'd installed it 6 months ago after tools went missing from neighboring ranches. The camera fed to a small monitor in his office that he walked to the house, checked on Knox still watching cartoons, and entered his office. The monitor showed the last week's recordings. Reed scrolled back to the night he'd left for Billings. Nothing unusual for the first 2 days. Then, At 1:14 a.m. on Tuesday night, a figure approached the barn. Reed enhanced the image. A man in dark clothing, medium build. The figure entered the barn and emerged 20 minutes later. Reed checked Wednesday night. 1:14 a.m. again. Same figure, same routine. Thursday night. 1:14 a.m. Friday night. 1:14 a.m. Someone had been using his barn as a staging ground. Someone who knew about the storage room, who had a key or the skills to pick the lock. Reed's phone buzzed. A text message from Willa. Back tomorrow afternoon. Hope you had a good trip. She didn't mention Knox. Didn't ask about the boy she'd supposedly left in Reed's care. Reed walked back to the living room. Knox had fallen asleep on the couch, the ice packs sliding from his face. The bruising looked worse under the lamplight. Knox. Reed gently shook his son's shoulder. Wake up, buddy. Knox's eyes opened, immediately alert and wary. I need you to tell me exactly what happened. Can you do that? Knox sat up. You came to my room, but you walked different, slower, and your voice was like a robot. What did I say? You said I was bad, that I needed to be punished. Knox's voice cracked. You put something over my mouth. It tasted gross. Then everything got blurry. Reed felt sick. What else? You tied my hands. Said if I told anyone, you'd do worse things. Knox looked at Reed with desperate eyes. But now you're being nice again. I don't understand. That wasn't me, Knox. I was in Billings. I can prove it. But it looked like you. It sounded like you. Reed pulled out his phone and showed Knox a photo from the hotel in Billings. The timestamp read Tuesday night, 11:30 p.m., 3 hours before the barn footage. See? I was far away. Someone was pretending to be me. Knox studied the photo. Really? And I'm going to find out who. Willa's car pulled into the driveway at 2:15 p.m. the next day. Reed watched from the kitchen window as she gathered shopping bags from the trunk. She wore a navy blue dress, heels, and her hair was styled like she'd spent the morning at a salon. Reed had spent the night thinking, planning. He'd photographed everything in the storage room, then put it all back exactly as he'd found it. He'd copied the security footage to a thumb drive and hidden it in his truck's glove compartment. Now he needed to see how Willa would play this. She entered through the front door, calling out in a cheerful voice. Reed? Knox. I'm home. Reed met her in the hallway. She smiled and moved to kiss him, but he stepped back. Where were you? Shopping in Missoula. I told you in my text. She set down her bags. Where's Knox? Taking a nap. He's hurt. Willa's expression shifted to concern, perfectly performed concern. What happened? He fell off the porch. Has a bad bruise on his face. Oh no. Is he okay? Should we take him to the doctor? Reed studied her face. Not a hint of genuine worry. Not a flicker of guilt. He's fine. Kids bounce back. When did it happen? Tuesday night, I think. Hard to tell exactly. Willa nodded sympathetically. Poor little guy. I should check on him. She moved toward Knox's bedroom, but Reed blocked her path. Let him sleep. They stood facing each other in the narrow hallway. Reed searched her eyes for some sign of the woman he'd married, the mother he'd thought she was. He found nothing. You seem tense, Willa said. How was Billings? Long, complicated. Well, you're home now. Things can get back to normal. Normal? Reed almost laughed. Willa, I need to ask you something. Of course. Has anyone been around the house while I was gone? Anyone at all? Her answer came too quickly. No, just me and Knox. What? Someone broke into the barn. Are you sure? Maybe you forgot to lock it. I never forget. Willa shrugged. Well, nothing was stolen, right? Maybe it was just kids looking for trouble. Reed kept his voice level. Maybe. You know how you get about security, Reed. Sometimes your military training makes you paranoid. The word hit him like a physical blow. Paranoid. She'd used it before, always at the right moments, always when he questioned something that didn't feel right. I'm going to install some additional cameras, Reed said, if it makes you feel better. But don't go overboard. We don't need to live in a fortress. She gathered her shopping bags and headed toward their bedroom. Reed watched her go, noting the confidence in her stride, the casual way she dismissed his concerns. That evening, after Knox went to bed, Reed set up hidden cameras throughout the house. He bought them months ago for the ranch perimeter, but never got around to installing them. Now they seemed essential. Micro cameras, no bigger than shirt buttons, with with wireless capability and night vision. He placed one in the living room, one in the kitchen, one in the hallway, and one in Knox's bedroom, each fed to an app on his phone. Willa sat in the living room, scrolling through her phone and occasionally glancing at Reed. "What are you working on?" she asked. "Just some electrical issues. Old house, old wiring." Reed finished the installation and joined her on the couch. They sat in silence, watching a crime drama on television. The irony wasn't lost on him. "Reed, yeah, are we okay? You seem distant." He looked at her, really looked. The face he'd kissed 1,000 times, the hands that had held their son as a baby, the voice that had whispered promises in the dark. "I'm tired," he said. "It's been a long week." "Of course. Maybe things will be better tomorrow." Reed nodded and said nothing. Tomorrow, he'd start watching. Tomorrow, he'd learn the truth. 3 days passed with painful normalcy. Willa cooked dinner, helped Knox with his coloring books, and kissed Reed goodbye when he left for work. But Reed watched her now with different eyes, and the cameras watched when he couldn't. Wednesday night, Reed reviewed the footage from his phone. Nothing unusual during the day: Willa cleaning, Knox playing, ordinary domestic life. Then, at 11:47 p.m., the living room camera caught movement. A figure entered through the front door. Reed enhanced the image, and his blood turned to ice. The man wore his face. The mask was perfect, terrifying in its realism. The figure moved through the house with practiced familiarity, checking each room before heading down the hallway toward Knox's bedroom. Reed switched to the bedroom camera. Knox was asleep, curled under his dinosaur blanket. The masked figure approached the bed and gently shook the boy awake. Reed turned up the volume on his phone. "Knox." The voice was his own, perfectly replicated. "Wake up, son." Knox stirred, opened his eyes, and smiled. "Dad, I thought you were asleep. I need to talk to you about something important." Reed watched in horror as the masked figure, wearing his face, speaking with his voice, pulled a small device from his pocket. The voice modulator. Knox couldn't see it in the darkness. "You remember what we talked about before, don't you? About keeping secrets?" Knox nodded sleepily. "Good boy. Now, if anyone asks who gave you that bruise, what do you say?" "That Daddy did it." "And why did Daddy do it?" "Because I was bad." "And does Daddy remember doing it?" Knox shook his head. "He forgets sometimes." "Because he was in the war." Reed's hands clenched around his phone. The bastards were coaching his son, using Knox's trust and love against him. The masked figure patted Knox's head. "You're such a smart boy. Now go back to sleep." Reed switched to the hallway camera, watching the figure leave Knox's room and head toward the front door. But instead of leaving, the figure went to the living room. Willa was waiting. She sat on the couch in her nightgown, arms crossed, expression hard. When the masked figure entered, she didn't flinch. "How did it go?" she asked. The figure pulled off the mask, revealing a man Reed recognized. Silas Marin, Willa's ex-boyfriend from high school. The father of 4 kids with 3 different women. A man who'd spent more time in county lockup than most people spend at their jobs. "Kids trained well," Silas said, setting the mask on the coffee table. "Still believes everything we tell him." "Good. The bruise is healing nicely. Not too obvious, but visible enough." Reed's stomach churned. They were discussing Knox like he was a prop in their twisted performance. "When do we move to the next phase?" Silas asked. "Soon." Reed's starting to ask questions, but he doesn't suspect anything yet. Men like him always think they're too smart to be fooled. And if he gets suspicious? Willa smiled, a cold expression Reed had never seen before. "Then we accelerate the timeline. File the protective order, claim he's having episodes. His military record will back us up. PTSD is a convincing narrative. What about the kid? Knox will say whatever I tell him to say. Children are remarkably adaptable when properly motivated." Reed felt bile rise in his throat. This was his wife, the mother of his child, discussing their son like a trained animal. Silas stood. "I should go. Don't want the neighbors getting curious. Use the back door. Park down the road like always." "What about the cameras Reed mentioned?" "He installed them on the perimeter. Nothing inside the house. He's predictable that way." Reed almost laughed. If only she knew. Silas headed toward the kitchen. Willa remained on the couch, staring at the mask. She picked it up, running her fingers over the rubber features. "Soon," she whispered. "Very soon." Reed saved the footage to multiple cloud accounts, then sat in his truck reviewing everything he'd captured. The conspiracy was deeper than he'd imagined. They weren't just trying to frame him, they were systematically destroying his relationship with his son while building a case for his mental instability. But now he had proof. Video evidence of their scheme, clear audio of their planning, documentation of child abuse. Reed felt the familiar calm that had served him in Afghanistan, the focused clarity that came when the enemy finally showed their position. The war was about to begin. Thursday afternoon, Reed was replacing the alternator on a Dodge pickup when someone knocked on his shop door. He looked up to see a teenage girl with dark hair and nervous eyes. "Are you Reed Callahan?" "Depends who's asking. I'm Cleo Marin. Silas is my father." Reed set down his wrench. Silas had mentioned having a daughter, but Reed had never met her. The girl looked 17, maybe 18, with the kind of wariness that came from growing up around bad decisions. "What can I do for you, Cleo?" She glanced around the shop, making sure they were alone. "I know what he's doing to you." "What they're doing?" Reed's pulse quickened. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." Cleo pulled a small digital recorder from her jacket pocket. "I've been living with him for 3 months. Court ordered, since my mom went to rehab. I hear everything." She set the recorder on Reed's workbench and press played out. Silas's voice filled the shop. "Kid believes everything." "Think Reed suspects anything?" "Nah, he's too stupid. Military guys are all the same, follow orders. Don't ask questions." Another voice, "Willa, just stick to the plan. A few more incidents, then I file the paperwork. With his service record, the PTSD angle will be easy to sell." "Silas, what if he fights back?" "Willa, men like Reed never see it coming. They're too trusting, too simple. Once we get full custody, we'll disappear. I've already picked out apartments in Seattle." Reed's hands tightened into fists. Cleo stopped the recording. "There's more," she said. "Hours of it. They think I'm asleep, but my room shares a wall with the kitchen. They plan everything there. Why are you showing me this?" Cleo's eyes hardened. "Because what they're doing to your kid is sick. And because my father destroys everything he touches. I won't let him destroy you too." Reed studied the girl's face. She had her father's dark eyes, but none of his weakness. "This must have been difficult to record. My father's been in and out of my life since I was born. I learned early to protect myself." She gestured toward the recorder. "Those recordings are copies. I have the originals hidden where he'll never find them. What do you want from me?" "Nothing. Just promise me you'll stop them." Reed picked up the recorder. "How long has this been going on?" "They started planning it 6 months ago. Your wife contacted my father through Facebook. Said she needed help with a problem husband. I thought she meant divorce papers, maybe some intimidation. I didn't know they were going to use your kid. Does your father know you recorded them?" "No. And if he finds out, I'm dead." Literally. Cleo pulled her jacket tighter. "He's put 2 women in the hospital and threatened to kill my mom when she tried to get clean. This is who you're dealing with." Reed nodded grimly. "I'm beginning to understand that. There's something else. Your wife has been researching your military service. She printed out articles about PTSD, veteran suicides, domestic violence statistics. She's building a case." "How do you know?" "I clean houses for extra money, including yours, twice a month. Your wife hired me through a service, doesn't know I'm Silas's daughter. I've seen the papers in her closet." Reed felt the ground shifting beneath him. Willa had been planning this for months, gathering ammunition, building her narrative. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated both him and the damaged girl standing in his shop. "Cleo, I need you to know something. If this goes to court, you might have to testify. I'm ready for that. It could be dangerous. Your father won't forgive you. My father stopped being my concern the day he decided to hurt a 5-year-old. Cleo's voice was steady, resolved. "Besides, I turn 18 next month. Court says I can choose where to live then." "And where will you choose?" For the first time, Cleo smiled. "Somewhere far from here. Maybe college if I can swing the finances." Reed made a decision. "You help me stop them, and I'll help you with college." "That's a promise." Cleo's eyes widened. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. Good people help each other. And you're good people, Cleo." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Thank you." Reed pocketed the recorder. "Is there anything else I need to know?" "They're planning something big for this weekend. I heard them talking about making it obvious and forcing the issue. Whatever they're going to do, it's soon. Reed felt the familiar pre-combat tension in his shoulders. Then we better be ready. Reed called Gordy Riggs from his truck, knowing his old Army buddy would answer, even though it was past midnight. Gordy had stayed in touch after Afghanistan, building a successful security consulting business in Denver. More importantly, he'd married a woman who'd become a criminal defense attorney. Reed? Jesus, what time is it? Late. Early. I need help, Gordy. What kind of help? Reed explained everything: the mask, the recordings, Knox's abuse, Willa's conspiracy. Gordy listened without interruption, asking only a few pointed questions. Brother, this is serious stuff. You're talking about child abuse, fraud, conspiracy. These people could go to prison for decades. That's the plan. Okay, first thing, you need to get Knox examined by a professional. Someone who can document the psychological manipulation. My wife knows a forensic child psychologist in Billings, Dr. Janet Walsh. She specializes in custody cases. Reed pulled out a pen. Got a number? I'll text it. Second thing, you need legal representation. Not some local lawyer who plays golf with the judge. Someone who understands complex custody fraud. Know anyone? My wife has a contact. Retired prosecutor named David Chun, who now does private defense work. He's expensive, but he's a killer in court. Literally ended the careers of 3 corrupt judges. Reed thought about his savings account. The money he'd been putting aside for Knox's education, for the ranch improvements, for their future. Price doesn't matter. Good. Third thing, you need to be smarter than they are. Don't confront them directly. Don't let them know you're onto their game. Just gather evidence and let the professionals handle it. I've got video of them coaching Knox. Audio of them planning the whole thing. Perfect. But Reed, I need you to listen to me carefully. These people are dangerous. If they're willing to abuse a child to get what they want, they're capable of anything. Watch your back. Reed looked through his windshield at the house where his son slept, where his wife plotted his destruction. I will. One more thing. Document everything with timestamps. Keep copies in multiple locations. If something happens to you, someone needs to be able to continue this fight. Understood. I'll call Dr. Walsh first thing in the morning. Can you get Knox to Billings this weekend? I'll figure out a way. Reed hung up and sat in the darkness, planning his next moves. Friday afternoon, he'd take Knox to see Dr. Walsh. He'd tell Willa it was a regular checkup, nothing unusual. Meanwhile, he'd continue gathering evidence, building his case, but Cleo's warning echoed in his mind. They were planning something big for the weekend, something to force the issue. Reed started his truck and drove home, knowing that everything was about to change. Friday morning arrived with unseasonable cold. Reed woke to find Willa already dressed, sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop and a cup of coffee. She looked up when he entered. Good morning. Sleep well? Fine. Reed poured coffee and noted the stack of papers beside her computer. Working early today? Just some paperwork. She closed the laptop. Reed, we need to talk. Something in her voice made him look closer. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying, or pretending to cry. About what? About Knox. About what happened to him. Reed sat across from her, keeping his expression neutral. What about it? I think you heard him. The words hung in the air between them. Reed had expected this moment, prepared for it, but it still hit him like a physical blow. What did you say? Tuesday night, when you came home from Billings. I think you were angry about something, and you took it out on Knox. Reed's voice remained deadly calm. I was in Billings Tuesday night. I have receipts. You came home early, around midnight. I heard your truck. That's impossible. Willa's eyes filled with tears, perfect, believable tears. Reed, I know this is hard to hear, but I think you're having episodes. Blackouts. The war changed you. I've never had blackouts. How would you know? That's what makes them so frightening. She reached across the table to touch his hand. Knox is afraid of you now. He flinches when you come into the room. Reed pulled his hand away. Knox isn't afraid of me. Yes, he is. And it's getting worse. What exactly are you saying, Willa? She took a shaky breath. I think you need help. Professional help. And I think Knox needs protection until you get better. Reed felt the trap closing around him. This was the moment they'd been building toward, the reason for the mask, the coaching, the careful planning. You want me to leave? I want you to get treatment. There are excellent programs for veterans with PTSD. You could come back when you're healthy. And Knox would stay with me, where he's safe. Reed stood slowly, every muscle tense. I'm not leaving my son. You might not have a choice. The threat was clear now. Reed saw Willa's transformation, the concerned wife mask slipping away to reveal something cold and calculating underneath. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've already spoken to a lawyer and to Dr. Martinez at the VA hospital. They agree that intervention might be necessary. Reed's blood turned to ice. Dr. Martinez had treated him for mild anxiety after his return from Afghanistan. The sessions had ended 2 years ago with a clean bill of mental health. But Willa was twisting those facts, using his honesty against him. You've been planning this. I've been protecting our son. Reed looked at the papers beside her laptop. Legal documents. Court filings. She'd been preparing her case while he'd been gathering evidence of hers. Where is Knox? Playing in his room. What? I want to take him out for breakfast. Father-son time. Willa hesitated. I don't think that's a good idea. I'm his father. Reed, please. Let's handle this calmly. There's no need for anyone to get hurt. The phrase made Reed's skin crawl. No need for anyone to get hurt, as if Knox hadn't already been hurt, as if the damage wasn't already done. 1 hour. Breakfast at Murphy's Diner. Then we come home and talk. Willa considered this, probably calculating whether it served her purposes. Okay, but I want you to think about what I said. About getting help. Reed nodded and went to get Knox. He found his son building a castle with wooden blocks, humming quietly to himself. Hey, buddy, want to get pancakes? Knox's face lit up. Really? Really? Just you and me. As they walked to Reed's truck, Knox slipped his hand into his father's. The simple gesture nearly broke Reed's heart. Whatever happened next, whatever battles were coming, Knox's safety would come first. But first, they had an appointment in Billings with Dr. Walsh. And Reed intended to make sure the truth finally came to light. 2 hours later, Reed sat in Sheriff Maven Trask's office, holding a protective order with his name on it. Knox was back home with Willa, believing they'd simply had breakfast together. Reed hadn't told him about Dr. Walsh, yet that conversation would have to wait. Says here you've been having episodes, Sheriff Trask said, clearly enjoying the moment. Blackouts. Violence toward your wife and child. Reed had known Trask since high school. The man had held a grudge for 20 years over a football rivalry and a girl who'd chosen Reed over him. Now he wore a badge and a smug expression. Says here you have 24 hours to vacate the premises, Trask continued. And you're not to contact your wife or son except through legal channels. Reed read the document carefully. Willa had sworn under oath that he'd struck her, threatened her, and abused Knox. She provided photos of bruises on herself and Knox. She'd submitted medical records documenting Reed's history of PTSD and violent episodes. It was a masterpiece of fraud, complete and convincing. I want to see those medical records, Reed said. Not my problem. Take it up with your lawyer. Reed folded the order and put it in his pocket. I'll need to get some clothes. Deputy Morrison will escort you. You have 30 minutes. The drive to his house felt surreal. Reed sat in the passenger seat of a patrol car, watching his own property through bulletproof glass. Deputy Morrison, a decent man Reed had helped with car trouble, looked embarrassed by the whole situation. For what it's worth, Reed, this doesn't feel right. Just doing your job. Still, Willa seems different lately. Harder. Reed filed that observation away. If other people had noticed changes in Willa's behavior, it might support his case later. They could tea the house. Willa watched from the front porch as Reed packed a bag. Knox stood beside her, confusion clear on his small face. Daddy, where are you going? Reed met his son's eyes through the bedroom window. Just away for a little while, buddy, but I'll see you soon. Knox nodded, trusting in the way that only children could trust. Reed finished packing and walked toward the patrol as Deputy Morrison drove away. Reed looked back at his house at his son standing on the porch, at his wife's satisfied smile. The war had officially begun, but Willa had made one crucial mistake. She thought she'd won. She had no idea what was coming next. Reed spent Friday night in a motel room, setting up his counterattack. The hidden cameras in his house were still active, still feeding footage to his phone. Willa and Silas had no idea they were being watched. Saturday morning, he drove to Billings for Knox's appointment with Dr. Walsh. Reed had called Willa, explaining it as a court-ordered psychological evaluation. She'd agreed readily, probably thinking it would support her narrative of Knox's trauma. Doctor Walsh was a woman in her 50s with gentle eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She spent 3 hours with Knox, using play therapy and careful questioning to understand his experiences. Afterward, she spoke privately with Reed. "Your son shows clear signs of manipulation and coached responses," she said. "When I asked about the incidents with you, his language was too sophisticated, too practiced. Real trauma memories are fragmented, emotional." Knox's answers sounded rehearsed. "Can you document that? I'll have a full report ready by Monday." Reed, "This child has been systematically programmed to believe a false narrative. It's a form of psychological abuse that can have lasting effects." Reed felt a mixture of rage and relief. Finally, a professional who saw through their lies. Will he be okay? With proper therapy and a stable environment, yes. Children are resilient, but the people responsible for this need to be stopped before they cause permanent damage. Reed drove Knox home, listening to his son chatter about the toys in Dr. Walsh's office. Knox seemed lighter somehow, as if talking to someone neutral had lifted a weight from his shoulders. That evening, Reed executed the final phase of his plan. He posted a message on Facebook, making sure it would be seen by mutual friends who would report back to Willa, "I can't fight this anymore. The lawyers, the courts, the lies. I'm done trying to prove my innocence. Leaving town tomorrow. Maybe it's better for everyone if I just disappear." The post was shared 6 times within an hour. Reed's phone buzzed with concerned messages for friends and family. He ignored them all at 11:30 p.m. He parked his truck in the woods behind his property and made his way to the barn. The cameras were still recording, uploading everything to the cloud in real time. David Chun, the lawyer Gordy had recommended, was monitoring the feed from Denver. Reed settled into the barn's hayloft with a clear view of the house. Whatever Willa and Silas were planning, he'd be ready at midnight. Silas's truck pulled up the driveway with its headlights off. He parked behind the house and entered through the back door. Reed switched to the kitchen camera on his phone. Willa was waiting, dressed in a robe, holding a glass of wine. She looked relaxed, victorious. "Did you see his post?" she asked. "Yeah, pathetic. Man can't handle being beat. It's perfect timing. With him gone, I can file for emergency custody. No contest, no complicated hearings." Silas opened a beer and sat at the kitchen table. "What about the kid? He's going to ask questions. Knox will adapt. Children forget faster than people think." Willa's voice was clinical, detached. "Besides, we can always tell him his father abandoned him. Create a new narrative." Reed's grip tightened on his phone. They were discussing Knox's future like he was property to be redistributed. "Speaking of narratives," Silas said, "we should probably get rid of the evidence." "What evidence?" "The mask, the voice changer, everything in the barn." Willa nodded. "Good point. The last thing we need is someone finding that stuff." Reed watched them finish their drinks and head toward the back door. He climbed down from the loft and positioned himself behind the tool chest, phone ready to record. Willa and Silas entered the barn, flashlights in hand. They went straight to the storage room. Silas must have been the one who'd picked the lock weeks ago. "Here's the box," Silas said, pulling it from the workbench. Willa examined the contents. "This mask is incredible. Where did you get it?" "Online. Custom job. Cost me $800. Worth every penny. And the voice modulator, another $200. Technology's amazing these days." Reed filmed them handling the evidence, their conversation providing perfect audio commentary on their crimes. "We should burn all of it," Willa said. "Already planned on it. Fire pit behind the house." They carried the box outside. Reed followed at a distance, staying in the shadows. The fire pit sat 50 yards from the house, surrounded by concrete blocks Reed had laid the previous summer. Silas built a small fire using newspaper and kindling. When the flames were stable, he began feeding items into the blaze. The rope went first, then the empty prescription bottle. "Wait," Willa said as Silas reached for the mask. Let me see it one more time. She held the rubber face up to the firelight, admiring their handiwork. It really is perfect. Reed never suspected a thing. Dumb soldiers, Silas agreed. Follow orders, don't ask questions, trust authority. Makes them easy marks. Willa tossed the mask into the fire. The rubber melted and bubbled, releasing toxic smoke. The voice modulator followed, its plastic case crackling as it burned. What the court will think now, Willa said, watching the evidence disappear. Poor, troubled veteran. Couldn't handle the pressure. Left his family behind rather than face the truth about his violence. Think anyone will buy it. Everyone will buy it. It's a perfect story. Returning soldier, PTSD, domestic violence, abandonment. The media loves narratives like that. Reed had heard enough. He retreated to his truck and drove back to the motel, uploading the footage to his lawyer and the FBI field office in Helena. By morning, multiple copies would exist in multiple locations. The trap was set. Now he just had to wait for them to walk into it. Sunday morning, Reed met with David Chun via video call. The lawyer had reviewed all the evidence overnight, the original footage of Silas abusing Knox, Cleo's audio recordings, Dr. Walsh's psychological evaluation, and the video of them destroying evidence. This is ironclad, Chun said. Multiple felonies, clear documentation, corroborating witnesses. They're finished. What's our next move? We go to the authorities. All of them simultaneously. FBI for the conspiracy and fraud charges, state police for the child abuse, county prosecutor for the domestic charges. We hit them from every angle before they can mount a defense. Reed felt a grim satisfaction. How long? 24 hours. Maybe less. I've already contacted the relevant agencies. They're reviewing the evidence now. And Knox. Emergency custody hearing first thing Monday morning. With Dr. Walsh's evaluation and the video evidence, you'll have your son back by lunch. Reed ended the call and drove to Murphy's Diner for breakfast. He needed to maintain the illusion that he was broken, defeated, ready to run. Several locals approached his table, offering sympathy and support. Reed played his part, accepting their condolences with tired resignation. At 2 p.m., his phone buzzed with a text from Willa. Heard you're leaving town. Probably for the best. Knox will understand when he's older. Reed typed back. Just want him to be safe. Take care of him. I will. Goodbye, Reed. Reed almost laughed. Willa thought she'd won completely. In 18 hours, she'd discover just how wrong she was. Monday morning arrived cold and gray. Reed sat in the motel parking lot, watching the news on his phone. The lead story made his blood sing. Custody fraud scheme exposed. 2 arrested in conspiracy to frame military veteran. The reporter stood outside the county courthouse. Microphones clustered around her. Willa Callahan, 34, and Silas Marin, 41, were arrested early this morning on multiple charges including child abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud, perjury, and evidence tampering. The arrests stem from an elaborate scheme to frame Callahan's husband, Army veteran Reed Callahan, for domestic violence and child abuse. Reed's phone rang. David Chun. They're in custody. FBI and state police coordinated the arrests. Willa was taken from the house, Silas from his apartment. Both are being held without bail. What about Knox? Safe with Child Protective Services temporarily. Emergency custody hearing is at 10 a.m. Bring Dr. Walsh's report and prepare to get your son back. Reed drove to the courthouse, his heart pounding with anticipation. In the parking lot, he saw news vans and reporters setting up for what would undoubtedly be a major story. Inside, the courthouse buzzed with activity. Reed spotted Cleo sitting in the hallway, looking nervous but determined. You okay? He asked. I testified to the FBI yesterday. Told them everything I knew. She looked up at him with worried eyes. My father's really in jail? He's really in jail, and he's going to stay there for a long time. Good. Cleo's voice was firm. What happens to me now? Like I promised college. I've already spoken to the community college in Billings. They have programs for students in your situation. Tears filled her eyes. I don't know how to thank you. You already did. You helped me save my son. The custody hearing lasted 90 minutes. Reed presented the evidence, methodically video footage, audio recordings, Dr. Walsh's evaluation, witness testimony. Willa's lawyer tried to argue that the evidence had been obtained illegally, but Judge Patricia Hawkins wasn't having it. The welfare of the child supersedes all other considerations, she declared. Emergency custody is granted to Reed Callahan, effective immediately. Reed walked out of the courthouse with full custody papers in his hand. Knox was waiting in the CPS office, playing with toy trucks and asking when his daddy was coming. "Right now, buddy," Reed said, kneeling beside his son. "We're going home." Knox hugged him fiercely. "I missed you, Dad. I missed you too." As they left the building, reporters shouted questions. Reed ignored them all, focusing only on his son's hand in his. The trial began 3 months later. By then, the story had spread across social media and news outlets nationwide. "Military Dad Fights Back Against Custody Fraud" became a rallying cry for veterans' rights groups and fathers' advocacy organizations. Reed sat in the front row of the courtroom, watching Willa and Silas at the defendant's table. They looked smaller somehow, diminished by orange jumpsuits and shackles that Willa's defense attorney, a slick lawyer from Missoula, tried to paint her as a mother driven to desperation by her husband's alleged violence. But the evidence was overwhelming. Dr. Walsh testified about Knox's psychological manipulation. Cleo took the stand and played the audio recordings for the jury. The video footage spoke for itself, showing Silas wearing Reed's face, coaching Knox to lie, planning their conspiracy in Reed's own kitchen. The prosecution painted a picture of calculated evil two adults who deliberately traumatized a child for financial gain. They turned a 5-year-old boy into a weapon against his own father, the prosecutor said during closing arguments. They stole his innocence, corrupted his trust, and damaged his relationship with the parent who loved him most. This isn't just fraud, it's psychological warfare waged against the child. The defense's final argument was weak, desperate. They claimed Willa had been manipulated by Silas, that she believed Reed was actually dangerous. But the jury had seen the videos, heard the recordings. They knew the truth. Deliberations lasted 6 hours, guilty on all counts. Willa showed no emotion as the verdicts were read. Silas broke down crying, finally understanding the magnitude of his mistakes. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge Hawkins had clearly done her research on the case. She'd read every piece of evidence, every expert report, every character witness statement. This court has seen many cases of domestic violence, child abuse, and custody disputes, she began. But rarely have I encountered such calculated cruelty, such systematic manipulation of a vulnerable child. She looked directly at Willa. You betrayed every instinct of motherhood. You used your own son as a weapon, teaching him to fear and distrust the parent who loved him unconditionally. You created trauma where none existed and called it protection. Reed felt Knox squeeze his hand. His son had insisted on attending the sentencing, wanted to see the bad people go away forever. Willa Callahan, you're sentenced to 28 years in state prison, with no possibility of parole for 18 years. You are permanently stripped of all parental rights to Knox Callahan. Willa finally showed emotion. Her face crumpled as the reality hit her. Silas Marin, you are sentenced to 15 years in state prison, with no possibility of parole for 8 years. The gavel fell with finality. Reed felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying. Outside the courthouse, reporters again shouted questions. This time, Reed stopped. I want to thank everyone who supported us through this ordeal, he said. The FBI, the state police, Dr. Walsh, our lawyer David Shunn, and especially Cleo Marin, who risked everything to tell the truth. What's next for you and Knox? A reporter asked. Reed looked down at his son, who was drawing pictures of trucks in a coloring book. We're going home. We're going to heal. And we're going to build a life based on truth, not lies. 1 year later, Reed stood in his workshop, teaching Knox how to use a screwdriver. The boy's bruises had long since healed, replaced by the healthy glow of a child who felt safe and loved. Like this, Dad? Knox asked, carefully turning the screw. Perfect. You're a natural mechanic. The therapy had helped immensely. Dr. Walsh had worked with Knox for months, helping him understand that the scary man who'd hurt him wasn't his father. That love didn't come with conditions or threats. Knox still had occasional nightmares, but they were becoming less frequent. Cleo knocked on the shop door, holding an envelope with the community college logo. "Got in?" Reed asked. "Full scholarship," she said, grinning. "Criminal justice program. I want to help other kids like Knox." Reed had kept his promise about college, but Cleo had earned the scholarship herself through hard work and determination. She'd been living in an apartment near the college, working part-time at Reed's shop while taking classes. "When do you start?" "Fall semester. But I'll keep working weekends if you need help." "The offer stands permanently," Reed said. "Your family now." Knox looked up from his screwdriver. "Cleo, want to see my fort?" "Always." Reed watched them walk toward the barn, where Knox had built an elaborate hideout among the hay bales. The storage room that had once held instruments of deception now contained only tools and supplies. His phone buzzed with a text from David Chun. Willa's appeal was denied. Final conviction stands. Reed deleted the message without responding. Willa was the past. Knox was the future. That evening, as Knox splashed in the bathtub and Reed cleaned up the dinner dishes, his son called out a question that had become routine. "Dad, will you tell me a story?" "What kind of story?" "A true one. About good guys and bad guys." Reed dried his hands and sat on the bathroom floor beside the tub. These conversations had become part of Knox's healing process, talking through what had happened in simple terms a child could understand. "Once upon a time," Reed began, "there was a dad who loved his son very much. But some bad people tried to trick them, tried to make them not trust each other. But the dad was smart," Knox said, continuing the familiar narrative. "Very smart. And he had help from good people who told the truth. And the bad people went to jail forever." "Not forever," Reed corrected gently, "but for a very long time. Long enough for the dad and son to grow up together and be happy." Knox splashed contentedly. "I like true stories better than made-up ones." "Me too, buddy. Me too." Later, after Knox was asleep, Reed sat on his front porch with a cup of coffee. The mountains stretched out before him, purple in the evening light. This land, this house, this life, he'd nearly lost it all to lies and manipulation. But truth had won in the end. Justice had prevailed. Knox was safe, Cleo was building a future, and the people who tried to destroy them were paying the price that a truck pulled into the driveway. Gordy Riggs climbed out, carrying a six-pack of beer and a grin. "Thought you might want some company," he said. "Always welcome." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set behind the mountains. Finally, Gordy spoke. "You ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't installed those cameras?" Reed considered the question. Without the cameras, it would have been his word against Willa's. Knox's coach testimony against Reed's denials. A decorated veteran's service record twisted into evidence of mental instability. They would have won, Reed said simply. "Probably, but you didn't install them. You trusted your instincts, gathered evidence, fought smart instead of fighting angry. I had good help. You had courage. Not everyone would have fought back." Reed thought about the other fathers who might not be so lucky, the children being used as weapons in custody battles, the veterans whose service was being weaponized against them. "Maybe that's what comes next," he said. "Helping other people in similar situations. You thinking about a career change?" "Maybe." Chun mentioned needing investigators for custody fraud cases. "So there are more cases like ours than people realize." Gordy raised his beer bottle. "To new beginnings. To new beginnings." They touched bottles as the first stars appeared in the Montana sky. Inside the house, Knox slept peacefully, dreaming of trucks and horses and a father who would never let anyone hurt him again. Reed had learned something important during the ordeal. Evil often wears familiar faces, speaks in trusted voices, and hides behind legitimate concerns. But truth, when properly documented and courageously defended, was stronger than any lie. When people asked him how he'd survived such betrayal, how he'd found the strength to fight back, Reed's answer was always the same. "I had something worth fighting for, and I'll never let a lie raise my son." The future stretched ahead, uncertain but hopeful, challenging but honest. Reed Callahan had faced the worst kind of betrayal and emerged stronger. Now it was time to build something better from the ashes of what he'd lost. Knox was safe. Justice was served. Truth had won, and that was enough.